What are we doing here?
These are my celery stumps.
Celery stumps inside.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So you know how we've been eating all that celery lately?
Yes.
If you just cut the bottom stumps off of your celery that you get from the grocery store, as long as it has that base on it, and you put them in water, they will start growing again. So this one I've had in here.
Oh man, look at that.
Yeah, I've had this one in here for a few days, and it just continues to grow from the center. So I'm just gonna have these in here until we get the garden set up, and then I'll plant them in dirt, and then that's a bunch of free celery.
It seems like the mudroom is a good spot for it, right? Because it's so sunny.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we'd want something south-facing, but we don't have a south-facing window where the cats won't destroy whatever is sitting in it. So this is good enough for now. They'll be outside soon enough. And you can see this is where I cut them, and then they just start sprouting up from there. Nice. This one's barely starting to sprout. This one's got some good growth on it.
Awesome. Can't wait. Hi there, I'm Sean the Modern Yeoman, and lately I've been contemplating how slapdash and frankly insufficient our current compost setup is, and well, I think I have an idea. With gardening season set to kick off, the topic of compost has been high on our minds lately. And while we do intend to purchase a few cubic yards of finished compost to use in our raised beds, we'd also like to curate our own supply of compost for here on the homestead. For the past few months, we've been keeping all of our food waste that doesn't go to the chickens in these empty ice cream tubs that I salvaged from the barn. And while that's all fine and good, we haven't really had a dedicated spot to dump that food waste, that compost. So for now, we've just been dumping it in this random pile back here in the woods. There's three reasons why I don't like this. The first one is that this is pretty far away from both the house and the garden. I'm imagining myself in the summertime when I want to sprinkle a little bit of compost on the raised beds. It's quite a haul to take this and wheel it over there. The second reason is that this pile is pretty unwieldy. There's nothing really to stop this pile from just getting bigger and bigger, and it's kind of hard to contain and turn over. Finally, the third reason is that it just plumb looks bad. So what's the plan? Well, right now I'm thinking that I'm going to put a homemade compost stall right here in this spot where I'm a lot closer to both the house and the garden, and I'm still kind of tucked away in the woods a little bit, so the compost itself isn't as visible to visitors, and hopefully it isn't as discernible via the other senses. Now you might be wondering what exactly a compost stall is. Well, put simply, it's just a three-sided structure that you can keep compost inside of and contained. Typically, there's three separate stalls, one for new food waste and compost, one for resting compost, and one for additional organic material, things like leaves and twigs that you can add to the new compost to help it develop. I'd eventually like three stalls, but I'm going to just start with one because I'm using repurposed old pallets that I I found, and I've only got enough to make one stall. But again, I'd like to build this up to 3 stalls eventually. I'm gonna hold these pallets up with some long pieces of rebar that I'm going to hammer into the ground, and then secure the pallets to the rebar with some really cheap metal conduit straps that I can just screw them on with. As you can see, there's a lot of brush that I need to clear out to make this little pathway a lot more accessible. Good thing I have my handy dandy chainsaw attachment on my weed whipper. And if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, then you know that clearing brush can only mean one thing: time lapse. All right, so I've got quite a bit done. I'm gonna keep up with it, but I wanna confirm with Holly where we're actually putting the compost stall. It's like right here, right?
Yeah, this I think is gonna be good because we'll still have a path out to the berry area. We'll have a path over to the shed. We'll be able to keep this open. We'll get rid of this junk eventually. So I think right here will be really good, as long as we leave some room for the path to get up to our little berry fruit area.
And the garden.
And the garden. So this is close enough to the garden and the house.
And the house, but it's still in the woods.
Yeah, it's still out here, so it's not going to be a giant eyesore. And then, you know, we can, if we add more stalls to it later on, we can clear out more of that. But I think that'll be good.
Cool. I'm going to get back to this, and then hopefully within an hour or so, I'm going to start putting the stall up.
Awesome. And then we'll dump some compost in it later.
Yes. Okay, slight change of plans. I think it's fair to say that I got a little bit carried away with my brush clearing, and I carved out a lot more space, a lot more lawn than I initially intended to. And so what I ended up doing is making this little path to the woods here. The spot where this path is where we were gonna put the compost stall initially. So I'm not gonna put it here anymore. And besides, I think it's a little bit too much on a slope. So I think what we're gonna end up doing is putting the compost stall here against this log. And that's good for a few reasons. It's relatively flat, the spot where I've picked out, and it gives me room to add additional stalls later. I'm gonna get going and get all the stuff I need and get that set up real quick. Well, there you have it. We've got ourselves a compost stall now with room on either side of it to add 2 more stalls eventually. It's on a slight slant, a slight angle, but I'm okay with that. We're both okay with that. The angle isn't enough to where any compost that we put in is going to tumble out. And if anything, it'll make it easier to collect when we do need to collect it and turn it over. It's a good day's work. I'm pretty happy that I was able to accomplish this in one day. To be honest with you, I'm also really excited with all the land that I cleared. Clearing brush is always such a pain, but when I look back, after I've done it, I'm always amazed at what I'm able to accomplish and what kind of land I've opened up for future use. So we've done a lot of clearing today. I've done a lot of clearing today, and that's kind of a bonus to what I did with this compost stall. So at this point, I'm gonna gather up the compost over there, the compost pile, and pop it in here. Are you ready to christen it, Holly? The very first load of compost?
I'm ready.
How does it feel?
Feels good. Ta-da!
That's stinky, which is good. Well, that's all I've got for today, folks, tonight. And until next time, here's the compost.